Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this General Government Committee meeting of August 6th, 2025. It is now 6 p.m. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Here.
Maloney?
Here.
Schmischer? Here. Stein?
Here.
Tracy?
Here.
Worthington?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Here.
Mayor Troutman?
Here.
Thank you for that. Tonight, we're going to be hearing about a police department recruiting retention initiative. And is that going to be you to start off, Ryan?
Yeah, I can go ahead and get started. Tonight we'll hear from Chief Schick and Commander Bell regarding some ideas for recruitment and retention initiatives. I do want to, have the caveats. We are in budget season. We are, everything is, dependent upon budget. But tonight we'd like to kind of get some direction from City Council on which of these ideas may be supported. And with that, I'll pass it on to Chief Schick.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for having us this evening. This is a critically important subject for the PD. As we go through this, we'll elaborate on how significant it is and why we are here this evening. I appreciate Mr. Stevens pointing out it's budget time. I will preface this with, I am sorry to be here asking for additional. Suffice it to say that the PD is very grateful of this council's continued support for our well-being and our success. However, there are lingering items that continue to be somewhat troubling for us. And I think we have brainstormed and came to some thoughts that may help us bridge that gap. But as Mr. Stevens indicated, we would love to present this information to you all and get your feedback and insight into this. So without further ado, we'll get started with recruitment and retention. When we talk about recruitment and retention, I like to keep things simple. So as dynamic and expansive as those items or those ideas are, very simply stated, we want to give them reasons to come to the Canyon City Police Department, and then we want to give them reasons for staying at the Canyon City Police Department. Some of the major influences toward that end are agency reputation, culture and climate of the organization, of course, pay and benefits, and then last but certainly not least, the workload and work-life balance. As you all know, CCPD has struggled over the last couple of years. We've not had a clean year since I arrived 5 years ago where we did not have a recruitment and retention need. Currently, we have 12 at the time I wrote this, 11 cadets now in FTO. For the last, and now let me add a caveat to that. Those 11 cadets are not reflective necessarily of our inability to retain all of those positions. 4 of those positions have been, we've been fortunate to attain a DOJ COPS grant, and all of you are well aware of our intentions to put a bicycle team together, and their district will be the business district and the Riverwalk primarily. So we're talking about 7 of those vacancies we've acquired over this past year, last 2 years, and that's left my sworn line level officers at about a 25% deficit. Now, in that light, we have to keep things in balance, and recognize that we continue to average about 30,000 calls a year. That has been consistent since I've gotten to Canyon City. We range about 27 to 29,000 calls. These numbers are reflective of this year, current date. We've got 2,030 cases. We've made 638 arrests, and we have a remarkable overall clearance rating of 65%, well above the national averages. And yet, in spite of this enormity, which is our workload, our folks continue to deliver service excellence every day. What's the cost of that service excellence? The first thing that we look at that is vitally important to our survival, our success, is the morale and wellness of our team members. A recent analysis of a peer support report from the first quarter reflected that our number one hardship for all of our team. So let me put that in context. We have the peer support regional team that we host, and I have trained peer support members that are the people that our team members reach out to in times of personal or professional concern, crisis, challenges, that sorts of things. And their number one reach out in the first quarter significantly was a hardship. The number one hardship was job stress. And let me put that in a little more perspective. Aside from job stress, and we're talking about the workload, we're talking about work-life balance, we're talking about family issues, all of these things rolled together these two items, put together amount for more than half of the reach outs, the 200 reach outs that occurred the first quarter for our peer support team members. Peer support team members, of course, we can't dive into that much further because those conversations are confidential. They're protected conversations by law. So we have to assume that job stress is got to be reflective of what we're doing day in and day out. And then the impact that it has on the family when we consider that work-life balance. So they have these conversations in confidence, and they steer them towards additional support services, or they help mentor them along through whatever the issue is. Our most recent employee losses were unequivocally due to workload and work stress. The work-life balance continues to be a challenge. Our team members work 14 days a month, 12 hours a day, which typically turns into 14 to 16 hours a day, which is even more than that at times, and you'll recognize that when we talk about our overtime figures. But they work 14 days a month, which sounds pretty good, like you're going to be off 14 or 17 days a month. But that's chipped away when we talk about things like mandated post-training, when we talk about in-service training to expand our capacity, to help our team members meet their benchmarks for CDP, when we talk about court, because court is very lawyer-driven, so the officers' schedules aren't really taken into consideration. We show up when they show up. There's a significant amount of court appearances that chip away with that time off. Factor in that every other quarter they rotate days to nights. Those night shifts sleep that first day away. So I'm telling you all this to give you an idea of those 14 days turn into something else much less in reality. Continuing on the cost of service excellence, and I talked a little bit about the significance of that overtime impact. This illustrates where we are currently this year, we've seen a 64% increase in our overtime. Projected out to the end of 2025, we're thinking we're going to be about $190,000. We were budgeted for $123,000. A good portion of that, and again, it's illustrative of that workload. But I want to thank council. I want to thank Mr. Stevens, because early on we recognized that there was going to be a considerable amount of overtime being worked when we're talking about being light 8 officers. And then you factor in the training, you factor in the courts, you factor in vacations. Those shifts stayed at minimal staffing almost most of the year, which is a considerable hardship. And all of that being said equates to more stress. And again, illustrative of the last to leave our team, kind of redundant, I apologize, salary, wages, workload, work-life balance, job stress, job stress, job stress. It's a very common theme. Had a conversation this morning with a senior CSO, and he has not tendered his resignation. However, we have concerns that he's going somewhere else for salary and wages purposes. And that unit has 5 people, and we lost 1 last week. So trust me when I say Jolene, as well as me, are concerned about where we're going, a couple months down the road. She has been in a perpetual training mode. She is my only CSO that has the bandwidth to train new officers appropriately to get them ready to do the job in an independent capacity. So again, we're very concerned about that. I don't think we can really appreciate the enormity of these challenges without also considering the cost of a new officer. I had Ms. Alvarez put some numbers together for me, factoring in uniforms, equipment, training time at the academy, salaries while they're at the academy, while they're going through our mini academy, and then the additional 16 weeks of FTO. All said and done, we're looking at $170,000 an officer before they ever get sworn in as or certified as a peace officer, and before they ever take the very first call as an independent police officer. We're spending $170,000 on them. And that is not counting the overtime that we're leveraging to make up for the minimal shift staffing levels and for all the other related ancillary duties that are incumbent on backfilling that gap. Looking back over the last 5 years, we've averaged about 3 to 5 people a year going to the academy. This year was considerably high, but 3 to 5 average. With just this number plugged in, we're talking about $500,000 to $1 million before they ever answer the first call. So when we're talking about recruiting and retention, I talked about those influences. Agency reputation is absolutely, if not the, I would say that wages and salaries and agency reputation are running neck to neck. It very much matters to our team members who come to work for us what our agency reputation is, what our culture and climate looks and feels like. These folks are highly dedicated. They are absolutely duty-bound to serve in dual roles. First, they want to be a guardian in their community. They want to be a community partner. But then they want to be warriors because they're called upon in some of our worst moments. And they have to be able to rise up to the challenge. I think we've built a pretty good model within the organization over the last 5 years, based in whole on the principles found in 21st century policing. We've expanded our community engagement exponentially. We are extremely community focused, extremely community engaged. In our culture and climate, we work very hard at building one that doesn't create risk for our people physically, doesn't create risk for our organization and our people and our city financially. So when we talk about what that culture and climate looks like, things like when, what's important now, a decision-making model that we stood up our first year here, my first year here, with Commander Bell and Commander Walsh. And it is a decision-making model that helps them sort through the noise and make better decisions that don't result in unnecessary escalations, excessive uses of force, that type of thing. That's a considerable footprint, and we have had, I would say, very good success. And Commander Bell can tell you better than I the number of founded complaints that we had 5 years ago compared to the number of founded complaints that we had last year, pale in comparison. Our numbers are much smaller. And our overall complaints are much smaller. So I consider that a win. ABLE is we were the first agency in Southern Colorado to become nationally certified under ABLE, Active Bystandership in Law Enforcement. Again, mitigating those risks and, insulating our team, our organization, our city. Active bystandership in law enforcement is a national model to help reframe the thinking of our officers so that they understand the significance of their duty to intervene and when that should happen and how that should happen. And we have seen that on more than one occasion. These officers are asked to deal with some of the most difficult circumstances our city has. They are oftentimes required to make life and death decisions in rapidly evolving situations, which is a terrible combination. And time again, we don't always make the absolute correct decision, but it is darn close, and it's absolutely the best decision given the facts and circumstances facing them at the time this occurs. So we have a very solid agency reputation. That goes without saying. And I'm very proud of that. And I think everybody that works for our organization is very proud of that. The neck and neck item is pay and wages and salaries. And again, I come back to our thanks to this council, our thanks to the previous council. We have benefited greatly under your leadership. And our pay and salary reflect that. Pay study in 2021 was quite beneficial. Don't know what the pay study is going to reflect in 2025, but again, your leadership and commitment to analyzing those salaries and trying to come up with a number that's reflective of the market and recognizes the significance of all of our team members, that's huge. Your commitment to the annual COLA and merit increases, huge. Not always huge in terms of those percentages or numbers, but as we go through this, I will say time and time again, little things matter when we're trying to impact the commitment and resilience of our team members. Every little thing we do to support them and build them up matters significantly. We have benefited greatly from council and the city expanding our training and our equipment budgets substantially. We are in a much better place today than we were 5 years ago. And all of that matters to these people that we're trying to recruit and that we're trying to retain. The career development program that you all oversaw implementation on 2 years ago is doing exactly what the career development program was designed to do. It is motivated and inspired people to expand their professional capacity, expand their educational capacity, and deliver a much higher level of service to our community. If you remember correctly, the Career Development Program is a four-step program that requires each officer meet certain benchmarks in terms of time in service, time in grade, academic achievement, professional achievement, community engagement, community projects, and as they do these things, they matriculate through this and get a percentage pay bump in their pay. That has done exactly what we intended it to do, and we are better for having done it. Experienced officer signing bonuses. We don't often get to leverage that, but it is certainly nice that it's there. We have leveraged it twice over the last 3 years, I think. And it meant a lot to those officers that we felt were worthy to come onto our team. When I say we haven't leveraged it much, not because we haven't had them apply, they just didn't successfully negotiate the background or we like somebody else. But those that we did bring on certainly appreciated that sign-on bonus. Competitive benefits, we are in a fairly good place. I know I'm here asking for more, but suffice it to say that we appreciate our take-home vehicle program. Our parameters around that, well, I'll get into that in a little bit. Our uniforms and equipment, we don't take that for granted. And I remind our officers, there are many agencies across the United States that do not have the budget bandwidth to issue uniforms and equipment, and that is the obligation and burden on the officer. So the fact that the city graciously provides that is a benefit. Our health care package is I think, second to none. And I think we cover a good portion of the healthcare premiums. We'll talk a little bit more about that. FPPA is the Cadillac of retirement systems in Colorado, at least for fire and police. Nobody else gains at the same rate in their retirement portfolio that FPPA provides. The 457 accounts, again, every single benefit matters. So every bit of money that's contributed, matched by the city is much appreciated. This year, we're going to be investing again in their overall wellness. We have Sigma Tactical Wellness coming in to do assessments on all of our team members. This is a comprehensive blood screening that I learned about at the National Academy. It is a national model for health assessments, but I'm told that these things project future diseases out and analyze based on an analysis of the blood. So we're super excited about that because, again, investing in our team. And if I can identify something in somebody that we can address now and avoid those tragic circumstances 5 years from now, diabetes, heart disease, you name it, I'm all in. And these are the things that we have provided, the city has provided, and is much appreciated. So I've kind of gone over the benefits that we currently have, and I've kind of set the stage on why this is important. Before I get into the sabbatical leave program, which I know you all got copies of the memo that I originally produced for Mr. Stevens, are there any questions thus far? I'm gonna get a drink of coffee, my throat's getting dry. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question in the sense when you're going back to the great teams that you have that help each other and so forth. Are police officers more likely to take advantage of that now? Because at least the stereotype from years ago was is that I'm keeping this in, I can handle this. Are they more willing to seek the help they need?
You're spot on, Councilwoman, and we're going to talk more about that as we move forward. But you're absolutely correct. We're creating a culture and climate that's shifting the industry. I can tell you in my 35 years, the first 25, it was just that. Don't want to hear it, don't want to talk about it. Yeah, you were an officer-involved shooting last week, I'll see you Wednesday. That's, the standard is changing. My philosophy, again, is pretty simple, and I tell my people this. It's okay to not be okay. And if I break you, it's my obligation to fix you. And I mean that wholeheartedly. So we leverage, at the regional peer support team, the peer support canine. Counseling has never been denied anybody who raised their hand. So I feel like we're in a pretty good place, and we're turning that corner so we don't represent what that industry used to look like, but you're absolutely correct. And they are more inclined to talk to a peer support team member who is a trusted peer, a trusted law enforcement officer, because cops are funny creatures. They don't like to talk to anybody but cops or
Yeah.
people that know cops.
Well, they want to talk to somebody they feel has been through it themselves.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Another question, with the town halls that have been held and so forth, have you given this presentation to them? Because this is something that through social media, you get all the backlash about, and I can't help but think indirectly at the very least, that this has an effect on the police force as a whole.
Well,
And I get kind of tired of that.
no, you're not wrong. And I will tell you, no, I haven't shared this in a town hall capacity. However, and I was just talking to Brandon about this because we are getting ready to launch Chat with a Chief, which will be a Facebook Live dialogue with the community. And I'm going to update them on information from the PD and programs and then take questions from them. So this might be a good one to get out there. But there was one other part that you mentioned. The social media aspect.
Well,
and-
and the effect it has on the officers
Oh,
themselves.
yes, ma'am. And to that end, we are absolutely blessed. I talk to chiefs all the time who struggle with those circumstances because there are shades of their community echoing what might be out there on social media in a national capacity. I have yet, in the 5 years I've been here, heard anything remotely close to that sentiment of negativity or oppression or, defund the police. I've never experienced that with this community.
Chief Schick, I had a question. Since it seems like this vicious circle about being understaffed a lot of the time has to do with retention. It seems like that's a core issue for us as a town. And I'm wondering if these benefits that you've suggested, and they all look interesting and, we can consider, is there a way, is it legal for us to incentivize retention and for them to say, sign off on, say if we were to give them a loan maybe up to $5,000 or $10,000 for a down payment on a house, something
Well,
like that. Is it illegal for us to say, okay, if we do this, then you need to stay here like 2 years, 3 years, and then if you leave earlier, then we'll prorate it. Is that something that you can do to
I-
help retention?
This has been a similar conversation that's come up over the years, and the last conversation we had, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Stevens, but I do believe Corey indicated those are some type pursuits that we could potentially leverage.
Yeah, I think there are, if you're talking about down payment assistance, there are different things that we could do with the city being a second and having a zero interest loan with no payments that is forgiven after so many years of service or something along those lines. We can get creative from a standpoint, when you're talking about loan forgiveness or something along those lines.
And I'd like to kind of add on to that. Actually, we already do something like that for the trainees. So when you're in training with the police department, as I understand it, and we certainly have the experts here, but, the training is quite valuable, as the chief said to us earlier. And if a trainee leaves, goes through the training and then goes somewhere else, doesn't stay with us, we have provisions where they pay us back for that training. And so that we already do something like that.
So I will say this, great minds think alike, because you just touched on two items that we're going to get into. One of them, Mr. Stevens, hasn't heard, so it's going to be quite a shock to him. But it's painful, it's painless.
And if I could, before we continue, on your first question, Councilmember Worthington, the statistic the chief just gave us is that so far this year, the first quarter, there were 200 outreaches, if I understood it correctly.
Yes, sir.
For talking about the stress of the job, as I understood what an outreach
Yes,
is.
sir.
And so that, 200 in a quarter, my goodness.
That's a
and
lot for us.
That's
but
a
it's good that
lot.
they're doing it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. So, to that end, recognizing all of those challenges, I'd like to explore some of the things that Mr. Stevens and I have discussed and some that we haven't discussed. The first, which is, it's really a unique pursuit. And I've kept this pretty close to the cuff, so I'm really spilling the beans here because I don't want anybody else to pick this up and run with it before we do.
Brandon, turn off the.
But so this is a very unique program, and I learned about it out of an article in Police Chief magazine. And there was a Chief Wagner, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, up in Minnesota that kind of launched this idea and created the article in the Police Chief magazine. And ironically enough, about the same time, Chief Worley of Fairplay and I happened to be in attendance at a funeral, actually, and we were discussing ongoing challenges, recruiting, retaining, and he brought this up, and I said, I just read about that. And so Jeff and I talked about it. Jeff had already penned much of the policy that I've adopted and modified, and I got to give him credit on a good portion of the memo that I provided. Fairplay has adopted this, and I applaud them because this is something that I feel has been needed in this industry for a long time, and nobody thought about it before this chief in Minnesota. So it's called the Sabbatical Leave Program, and it all kind of hinges on science. It's been long recognized in the mental health field that police officers experience adverse health effects, namely mental health disorders. And when we get in the weeds on this is really just troubling for me. The studies suggest that 1 in 7 cops suffer from PTSD or depression, meaning they're clinically, if they were seen by a psychiatrist, they'd be clinically diagnosed with PTSD or depression. Officers are at a 54% higher risk of dying by suicide. And I guess why this is so troubling for me is because I've had the misfortune and fortune to see our industry pivot, where we weren't concerned about your mental wellness. Now we're getting concerned about your mental wellness. I've known 3 personally that I worked with over the last 30 years in Virginia that died by suicide. It's real. It happens. I look at that number of 1 in 7, and that tells me 6 of my officers could clinically be diagnosed with PTSD or depression. That's concerning. As a preemptive response plan, the sabbatical leave program looks to attack the very root of much of this, which is that job stress component, the work-life balance. As a preemptive response plan, agencies are offering many different program pursuits, as we discussed here this evening, with peer support, peer canines, clinical work. We talked about historically, our industry was horrible at this for years, but we've turned a corner. This is an exclusive leave program for our officers. When they reach their 5-year mark, we give them 30 days off. And it's not time against their PTO. It's not time against it's literally that. It is 30 days off, paid wellness. It's designed it's designed to offer a focused approach to help the officer decompress, recharge, and build resiliency. And all court appearances, all training are pre-excused. The officers are directed to disconnect from work and strongly encouraged to pursue healthy pursuits, work on their relationship with family and friends, faith-based initiatives, whatever brings them a sense of refreshment, recharging. And that's only interrupted in the most extreme cases. For instance, what would that look like? We have an officer-involved shooting impacting 7 or 8 officers who are now all on administrative leave for an indeterminate amount of time. That would be an extreme circumstance. Thankfully, we don't face that too often. And again, they're encouraged to spend that time on themselves, with their family, friends, and other healthy interests. The real beauty, I think, in this, aside from the mental wellness component, is from a budgeting standpoint, there's really no expense here. We're just giving them time off, which doesn't affect our budget negatively. We were going to pay them whether they came to work or not. The cost would be minimal when we have that fully staffed team, and we get 12 to 24 month window to satisfy our burden of giving them the time off that they've earned. The return investment, this cannot be overstated in any degree, the significance of it. A better balanced employee who genuinely feels appreciated. Genuinely feels appreciated. As I read through this, and Tim and I talk about this stuff all the time, and I go back to my first sheriff told me very directly and unequivocally right after I became a sergeant, people don't quit jobs, they quit people. When we stop investing, when we stop showing genuine care and compassion, when we stop giving a darn, and we just treat them like any other piece of equipment, that's when they really start leaving. So I think the sabbatical leave program is an enormous investment in their wellness, and I don't see them seeing it any other way. And I think it amounts to us telling our team members, we see you, what you do matters, and I tell my team that every single day, and we care. And that equals enhanced recruiting and retention. And a greater commitment to that service excellence model that we believe in so strongly, we put it on the back of our car. So, before we get into take-homes and mileage stipend, any questions, thoughts, concerns?
I just have one. Just by chance, could you get us a copy of that article? I'd love to read that as well on that, on this program.
Oh, back
you
to
know,
the
out of-
police chief?
Yeah, out of
Yeah.
Minnesota. I would love to take a read on that.
Make a note of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll dig that up, make a copy of it.
Is that in your references? I know at the end of your memo, you have a,
I don't know that we put it in the references. I may have, I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at it, honestly. Either way, we got a note of it. I'm gonna find it and I'll send it out to you.
sounds good.
Now, of course, and you read this in the memo, this is industry shifting. This is brand new. So we have no empirical evidence to the value of this. But just the prima facie evidence alone, at least from what we've read, and I called the chief in Minnesota and talked to him, and the results were positive, very positive. It was well received. I mean, how could it not be? It's 30 days off free. But I think at the end of the day, they recognize the challenges that they face day in and day out. And by making this commitment to their wellness, I don't see how you could not be committed to the people who afforded you that.
Quick comment.
Yes, ma'am.
If I can. I know maybe all of us can think of our own work history, not in law enforcement, but my own work history. I think of jobs where if you don't have the environment that you have been creating of trust and the feedback and the positive and valuing your employees, I can remember jobs where if someone told me to go take 30 days off, I would take that to mean don't come back. But this is a whole different
Yes,
thing
ma'am.
here.
It's a little different perspective.
And, it really, this isn't, in other words, it's just part of the whole package, the concept is. And I think that's important to point out, that it's not just saying, oh, get out of here for 30 days and maybe you can have a job when you come back.
No.
So it's
no.
important
And
to say
in fact,
that.
it's explicitly written into the policy. They come back in the same status they left.
Right.
Chief, could I play devil's advocate just for
Sure.
a moment? It seems like through no fault of anybody, just conditions and perhaps a lack of available qualified people, you find yourself down by 25% at different times. So say I'm an officer, I've been there 5 years, and I'm ready to take that 30 days. So if you're down by 25%, what are you going to tell me?
That's included in the policy, that leave is conditional based on staffing levels.
Right, so,
Yeah.
but practically, to keep people, not just to keep them happy, but to let them know you see them,
Yes.
how would you juggle or manage
Well,
that?
from a practical application, I would look at the employee, I would look at the vacancies, and I would project when those vacancies are going to be filled and help them work to build that into their timeline. So that they, I don't want to walk up to an employee and say, take your 30 days tomorrow. I want you to go home, talk to your family, get your plans together so you can go do the things that we are directing you to do, refresh, recharge, spend that quality family time. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but, we, even locally, have too high of separation rate amongst husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends. So I know what that cost is on the other side of that coin. My daughters and my wife lived it for the last 35 years. And I try to make a point when we do family night and we bring them in and talk about the job and talk about, what to expect, not only from the job, but from us to help, help build resiliency within the family. That's a very high commitment of ours. So I would encourage that employee to work with Commander Bell, myself, whoever the supervisor is, to let's identify that timeline. You're going to get your time, and you're going to get it as soon as we absolutely can make it happen.
Can I ask the same question in a slightly different way, maybe? How often over the past 5 years would the vacancy rate have enabled people to take the 30-day sabbatical?
No, that's a great question, and I think when we're back in those 3 to 5 range, that's one officer a shift, essentially. And we're not at minimal staff there, so we have the bandwidth to have people off. We even managed to get people off this past year and a half, 2 years, at that 25% deficit. Now, that's when the minimal overtime impact would come up, because we may have a shift or two during that officer's respite that we have to pay somebody to come out and meet those minimum, because inevitably Murphy's going to put his head in there, and we're going to have somebody on vacation, or that shift's going to be down one. This one is going to go on their sabbatical leave, and then somebody's going to get sick, or somebody's kid's going to get sick, or something. And those would be those occasional overtime caps or coverage that I would anticipate.
With 43 officers, once this program is kind of up and running, wouldn't you almost always have somebody on sabbatical to where you would almost need another full-time position to cover it?
I don't think so, honestly. Tim and I have ran the numbers, and right now, I think as we launched it, if we launched it, that would be our biggest impact. In that right now, is it 22 or 23? It's 22 or 23 officers that are eligible at the end of this year. So I went through the list and I split them by admin versus patrol, meaning command staff, detectives, patrol. And I think in that list of 23 officers, after we get these folks out of FTO, I think we could come out ahead of, we tried to build in a 2-year timeline to meet that demand and get them their leave. 23 officers, you would think it would take all of that, but because of the admin and the patrol split, we can impact both of those at one, 2 at a time without impacting the mission. And I think we could get it done easily in 12 to 14, 16 months.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to say a couple of things. I've used this before, or shared this before with others, but and so if you've heard this, please excuse me. But when I was working, and it was a fairly high pressure job, one of the best vacations I ever had, it was it might have been 10 consecutive days of vacation, but I went somewhere where my cell phone carrier didn't provide service. Oh, that was so great. That was really great. And the other thing I'd like to share is a lot of times you can, when you're working in a job, you can kind of get into that hero mentality where you're going to save the day. And so eventually, when I was in the private sector, what I finally told myself, because what that meant is working weekends, essentially, lots of consecutive days of work. And I finally told myself, wait a minute, I am not going to take a day of vacation to have a day off on the weekend. So,
Yeah.
But,
Well, you touched on two good points, and you're absolutely right. And part of the policy that you haven't seen yet specifically directs no contact with the organization, you leave your work cell phone at home, and all of leadership, direct order, do not call them for any reason.
right.
Because that moment of clarity, that moment of freedom is priceless. You can't put a price on that. And I do worry about that. A lot of our folks, and Tim and I were talking about this yesterday, there are a number of our people who consistently lose PTO. And I think it's a combination. I think it is because at various times we're short-staffed. However, I think, as you called it, the hero condition or
Complex, whatever.
complex,
Mhm.
yeah, they are absolutely riddled with guilt if they take off and something happens to their partner because they weren't there. So, we battle that on both sides. This program, I think, will help them, in that capacity.
And I do have just one comment for you, but in reading the memo on the second page at the bottom, where you start talking about how it actually would work, and you talk about 160 consecutive hours of time off, that's
Yes.
I misconstrued that and thought that meant 7 days of away from the job. And really what you're talking about is 160 consecutive work hours.
Yes, and I tried to classify, and I apologize if it wasn't that clear. We have two distinct components in terms of hourly wages or hourly employees. 160 is our admin folks, detectives that work the traditional 8 to 4, 9 to 5, 40 hours a week. The other side of that coin is our 7K people, which are our patrol, and they work 168 hours. So the 160 folks are 2080, the 168 are 2336. So they would get what's equivalent to their month of duty.
Thanks. Just a couple more questions from my perspective. And this may be in the policy, but not in the memo. I'm used to, after this type of agency investment, there being a post sabbatical service requirement or something along those lines, so that you don't have folks hit their 5-year mark, take the month off, and then, go grab a signing bonus from another agency or something like that. Are you envisioning having them be required to come back to CCPD
Well,
for
that
a
was
year?
certainly something we could entertain that I think would be a fair checks and balance. But if we do what Councilwoman Stein and I have in mind, they got to come back to get a check. So.
Okay. Fair. And then I was also wondering about, do you have a rough sense of the number of sworn officers in Fountain and Painesville? I'm just wondering, I know Fountain is a...
Fairplay.
Sorry,
Fairplay.
Fairplay. I know Fairplay
Smaller
is
agency.
a much
I
smaller
think they are
agency.
more aligned than we are. Oh my, it's almost a year ago since I talked to that chief. But I think he was more in line with Fairplay's numbers than our numbers. I think in the grand scheme of things, you start approaching 70, 80, 90 officers, that becomes a tall order. I did share this with Chief Knoller, and he's like, there's no way I could do that. He's like, I think it's absolutely phenomenal. There's no way I could do that. Again, they're battling the same thing. I'm down 8, truly, and, he's down 120, Wow. Yeah. So.
I think the other thing that I would want to kind of tease through or think through at the program's outset are what are the metrics that we would want to measure the program's efficacy by? Is it, attrition rate per year? Is it
there's a lot of different-
recruitment? Because I think once you put in to place this kind of benefit, it's really hard to
Yeah.
take it away.
No, I
So
think there's a
having
number of metrics we could identify to help measure that. And this doesn't stop, I don't know if I spelled it out clearly in the memo. The premise of this need is based on that cumulative chronic and acute trauma. The trauma that builds over time, the cumulative trauma, is equally, if not more significant at times than the acute trauma. Because, again, going back to what Councilwoman Worthington was saying, we still have, despite the chief and Commander Bell's best efforts, that persona, that hero complex, that I'm okay, I don't need to talk about it. So we're still battling that along these lines. But so in that light, the first 5 is where you're eligible. Every 3 years after that, we propose that they also get 30 more days of respite. So it's 5 and then 3. So the carrot is also the sabbatical program. I deal with all this stuff, but my city, shows care and compassion, and I get this leave, and I get to go do things with my family and reinvest. And then 3 years down the road, I get to do it again because they care and they're investing in me and my family.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think the
So I think
idea
there's a
behind
little
it is really, really
inspiration there for staying. We give them
Absolutely.
a reason to stay. Come here, and then let's give them reasons to stay.
And I think that the idea behind it is really, really interesting. And as we're looking at potentially scaling up from those smaller agencies like Painesville and Fairplay, having in place kind of what is our baseline when it comes to recruitment, how many officers are actually reaching out, what is our baseline when
I'd
it
be
comes to
interested to
attrition
know what
rates,
those
and
numbers
then
look like
what
post.
what are we expecting this
Yeah.
to actually do, and then what is it doing on an annual basis? Because if it isn't meeting the need, or is it really about the officer's mental health and well-being? Are we expecting it to go from 200 reach outs down, or actually up because folks are even more comfortable reaching out when they need help
That's
to
a great
your peer
question.
counseling program? So I think just figuring out what do we expect this program to accomplish, and then is it actually accomplishing that, or do we need
Sure.
to refine it?
Did you write all that down? Okay.
Steel trap, Commander Bell.
No, that's a great question. Yeah.
Seems like if nothing else, I mean, if you needed to prioritize all those kinds of metrics, that just the retention metrics might be the number one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe recruitment's up there too
Well,
somewhere, but-
and I think you could measure both, because
Yeah.
I tell you, I ask every single applicant that comes in why they want to be a cop and why you want to be a cop here. And they're honest. They tell me exactly why they want to come here. So, yeah,
Do
I
they have
think.
good reasons? I mean-
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I talk about culture and climate, and I talk about the organizational reputation,
Right.
that's exactly what they reflect to me.
Yeah.
I heard from this person at this agency. I heard from this person at that agency. So, yeah, as I tell my team all the time, what we do matters.
Yeah.
And so there were other things you needed to tell us.
Yes, sir.
Please.
So,
One of the problems with having a problem-solving council is they like to chew on
that's
things.
okay. I'm here with you. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate you all giving it the thought and consideration it's due. So transitioning from the sabbatical leave consideration, I'd like to talk a little bit about take-homes versus mileage stipends. Currently, the PD has a take-home policy, which is considered a worthwhile benefit to, in terms of recruitment, certainly in terms of retention. The problem is, and our policy is 10 miles as the crow flies from the PD. Currently, we have about 30% of our team that lives outside those parameters who commute to work every day. As you might imagine, and those numbers vary. I mean, I have folks that live in Pueblo West, and I have folks that live in Black Forest. So those numbers are considerably different in terms of, gas and maintenance on the vehicle. But it's a significant cost nonetheless. And again, just getting back to, little things do matter. I think we'd like to talk about offering a mileage stipend. We looked at expanding the take-home program. It's a trend now in organizations. Sheriff McGraw up in Park County has a deputy that lives in Canyon, and he gets a patrol unit as a take-home. That's quite a drive. So it's the norm is to expand that coverage so that chiefs and sheriffs can remove that burden and have them come to work. Even if we wanted to do that right now, we simply could not. We do not have the fleet to support that. I think we'd need an additional 6 cruisers to accommodate that. The bigger problem or concern for me is that would reduce the service life of our Tahoes, our police units by, I think, probably about an average of 3 to 5 years, which is half, or almost half, because we have a policy of 100,000 miles or 10 years. And we stretch that out on a lot of them. I certainly understand and appreciate many of them are victim of circumstance. They own homes. They bought those homes when interest rates were better, prices were better. They're not interested in re-entering the market in this current climate. They're going to stay right where they're at. And I come back to giving them reasons to stay. Because at the end of the day, if I've got a $450 a month gas bill, traveling back and forth to work, if somebody takes a chunk out of that, I'm gonna appreciate that. We looked at government per diem rates. We absolutely cannot afford that. So I would, if it were council's will, I would suggest a cap, a threshold, and it would be across the board for everybody, whether you live 25 miles or 45 miles. But everybody would get a little bit of something.
Can I just add a little
Yes,
quick
ma'am.
comment on that? Might want to think about, or maybe you have thought about adding into a policy, if you went this way, adding into the policy that someone couldn't move farther away as an existing employee, or that they wouldn't be reimbursed if they moved farther away.
Well, when we were talking about the government per diem rates, we were a little fearful that it might encourage people to move outside the city.
Right, yeah.
Which is why we said, no, we're going to put a cap on it. We're going to make it a little more reasonable. And we don't know what that looks like, right? We could make that a tiered stipend program over the next 5 years up to a certain amount. There's a lot of different ways we could pursue that.
Chief, can I just ask one question?
Yes,
This
sir.
is just kind of an off question, and because I think some of the things are good on, and this is just my own opinion on this mileage thing. How do I put this nicely? It's
Just put it out there.
It's still a job,
It is.
and we're working on all this other stuff to get on. But, we might have some city employees who all of a sudden say, I live 30 miles out. What are you going to do for me? And if we start rolling down that, and I'm just thinking of them as well.
Absolutely.
What do we do then for all them? could be a snowball and or create some more problems. I'm just saying, just something that we might all want to think about. I full support to your,
Absolutely.
You know
And it's a
that.
perfectly valid question.
but, I'm just looking at this going, wait a minute, this might be something that all of a sudden an employee who lives in Pueblo West, Colorado Springs, who knows, up Highway 9.
Absolutely.
So
And
just something
so
for all of
these-
us to think on.
These ideas are little chips to try and close that pay disparity, because at the end of the day, that is the other side of this coin, right? We talked about workload, work-life, balance. The other side is pay. The individual that I was talking about potentially leaving is staring at DOC. They're starting at $29.44 an hour. I have senior officers who have committed 5 years to this city that aren't making that as senior police officers. Our newest recruits are making $25.44. When they come in, tears in their eyes, I don't want to quit. I don't want to leave. I have to leave. And I do the best tap dance I can. And we try to look at the long game and consider retirement and all the things. But they got to go. A completely fair question and a fair reaction. Ryan and I talk about that all the time. My job is to advocate for my folks. His job is to push me away and remind me that there's other people in this city. And I get it. But we're trying to put a Band-Aid on an open wound. And I'm afraid I don't want to come in here and ask for this stuff, because you guys and girls, you council people, have been incredibly gracious to us. You have provided at every turn. And I know how it looks and sounds. But I know I have a duty to come in and tell you. We set off on a mission when he hired me to change the culture and climate of this organization and stabilize it. I'm doing everything I can to do that part. This other thing continues to be that tail we can't catch, if that makes sense. So a perfectly legitimate question, and I get it, and I appreciate it. But as your chief, if I don't come in here and advocate for them and I don't tell you what we're facing, I'm not doing my job.
And as a councilman, I support our police department.
No doubt. I don't have any doubt in your,
I need the question as well.
yep, I don't have any doubt in any of your support. None.
I'd like to jump in on this a little bit, because I've thought about this actually for a couple of years now. It's been, in my opinion, it's been apparent to me that we're going to have to break the link between police officer pay and city employee pay. That just because the police department gets a raise does not mean the city departments are going to get a raise, because they're entirely different animals. I mean, they are sworn officers of the law. They put their lives on the line every day as they're doing their job. And all you have to do is look at the overtime. And the question that if a city employee came to me and said, well, wait, you're considering boosting pay for police, why not us? A simple answer to that is just look at the overtime hours. How many overtime hours are we paying for in the city? Which is not a lot. We're paying for a lot in the police department, and that's an ongoing problem. And that's going to be, I think, up to us and perhaps councils that come after us to be able to, stand up and where it's appropriate, say, wait a minute, there's a problem here. We don't necessarily have a problem. It's just gee, I'd sure like that too, problem. Yes.
In a similar respect, once you said that, Tim, it's like, yeah, what the heck? And then I got to thinking the skill level, the training that is involved, and everything else to expand on what John Pro Temp Mayor just said, is that basically, I think you do have to divide the line in a respect, because it's two different animals, and and I think, I'm thinking back even, now it's over 50 years ago now, when I first started with Public Service Company, but it was funny, we always got, the non-union people got the same raises as the union people, and they were the ones who did all the negotiations and stuff that way. Well, about 30 years ago, that quit, and we were totally on a, union versus exempt versus hourly was totally different, and it was based on the fact is, what the heck do we do? What are our skill levels and things that way? So it was like, yeah, we were frustrated because some of us didn't get the same as what the union got per se, but a lot of times we got more than maybe what the union got. So we sort of have to look at it on individual job basis, I think.
And,
Could I-
and
oh, go ahead.
I'm just, and I agree, and believe me, Chief Schick, they know I support them 100%. I'm just saying, and it's also for the employee morale here. If some are out, they're gonna go, wait a minute, this is a simple thing of just paying for my gas if I'm living 40 miles away. That's all I'm saying. Do I believe in these guys? He knows that, 100%.
I think it's defensible.
Could I ask, Chief Schick?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming most of these strategies are solely for the sworn officers. Do you have a concern within your own portion of the agency?
I have that same battle that we're talking about, city employee versus PD employee, internally with my professional staff versus sworn staff. And quite honestly, I worry equally about them. And my first notion was to include them in the sabbatical consideration, because they're exposed to this trauma vicariously and directly through images and reports that they have to read. And there is empirical data on the effects of that type of trauma exposure. But at the end of the day, I got to start where the problem's the most significant. And I threaten Mr. Stevens all the time. That's next. I'm joking, half joking, because I do. I worry about them all.
And
I think
I also ask that question very often.
Yeah.
This is just for sworn, correct?
Yes.
And I think that that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Do we have the same recruitment and retention issues in other parts of the city?
Yeah.
Or is that has that been addressed through the pay analysis and the merit-based increases and the COLA increases that we've been doing?
Yeah, I think, we'd have to involve Butch and look at, at the various turnover rates, but there are some departments that have more turnover than others, and, PD traditionally has been one of those departments. Going back to the 2021 pay study and Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick's comments, it's probably a reminder for those who were on council during that period, and information for those who weren't. When we did that pay study, we ingraded sworn officers further into the range than we did city staff, and we also have sworn officers on a different pay grade range. It's completely separate than city staff. I think we might have administrative staff that crosses over onto city pay grades, but that we do have some of that separation, and we do look at that from that pay analysis as well.
So just getting back to reasons to stay, not to go. Looking at other opportunities for small stipends to help bridge that pay disparity gap. In my former organization, we offered educational and professional stipends. If you had an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, you got different stipend amounts added to your annual income. If you were one of, the recognized professional certifications, i.e. a SWAT team member, digital forensics, firearms instructor, use of force instructor, ICAC detective, high liability and high demand areas, you'd be eligible for a professional stipend. Now, bear in mind, this is not giveaway money. These are people that went above and beyond to make certain accomplishments to expand our capacity, expand their capacity. The professional stipends would be available to those individuals that Sergeant Gary began last year developing subject matter expert training tracks. So we could identify certain individuals who were interested in firearms, driving instructor, ICAC investigator, digital forensics, identifying the 8 or 10 classes that would run them up the advanced accelerated ladder, and put them in a space where they become the subject matter experts in that field for our organization. Again, expanding our professional capacity. I have one sergeant right now that is advanced his way through Force Science Institute, which is an advanced program for force analysis, and he has accepted a position to go into the civil arena to serve in that capacity to analyze force on a law firm that routinely defends police officers in cases. You might be familiar with one of the attorneys, Tim Walsh, but they look favorably on that sort of thing, and that's certainly a feather in Sergeant Gary's cap, and it's certainly a feather in our cap, because that trial experience reverts back to us, and we gain capacity in becoming more resilient in our use of force applications and analysis. So those stipends can be certainly beneficial. So one of the other things that has come up, and just recently, I heard some folks talking about possibly increasing the tuition reimbursement amounts, which is a pool of money for the entire city. It just depends on how many people participate in it, what it looks like, what your return, your reimbursement might look like. And then we come back to the 5-year retention bonuses. As Councilwoman Stein so forward-thinking pointed out, I really thought about this, and I apologize to Ryan before we began, because he and I hadn't had a chance to talk about this. But I've been thinking about it. I think about this stuff a lot. Just trying to find a path to stabilize things for us, so we can work on our resiliency, work on our capacity. And I came back to exactly what Councilwoman Stein was saying in that examination of giving them a reason to stay. We typically see these folks, correct me if I'm wrong, first year or two. And some are sooner, some are a little later. But that seems to be the sweet spot where they really start questioning, was this a good decision? Where am I going? And I feel like if we could just get them over that hump, and we could get them to 5 or 7 years, because that's when the CDP starts impacting salaries the most. Still not exactly where we would like to see it. I don't know that it ever will be. But that's where it starts impacting. And when they really get to 10 years, I got master officers making real reasonable money, living comfortably, as they should. But getting over that hump, getting past to that 5-year mark, having them recognize the significance of their investment, having them be around veterans and folks more senior that can talk about, other than the chief, talk about the significance of the CDP as it compounds year after year, talk about the retirement program, talk about these things and help them build that perspective. The only way I can think of to get them to that area is with a carrot down there at the end of that 5-year mark. I don't know if it's genius, I don't know if it's desperate, but that's what I came to in line with Councilwoman Stein. So that is the 5-year retention bonuses. I brought up the health benefits just to say, I think we're doing great there. But when we talk about competitors, and these are 2 competitors, I do have one out there paying 100% of health benefits, and I have another paying the same as us in terms of health benefits, but dental and vision was with 100%. And again, every little bit matters. So I tried to give you a wide range of, we could do this, we could do that. At the end of the day, anything matters, everything matters. And it goes a long way in terms of them feeling appreciated. So I know it's getting late. I'm trying to get into this housing and get out of this housing.
John, before you get too far, health benefits, 85, 100%, that, it's really hard to compare from an apples to apples standpoint
It
because
is.
those plans are designed so
Plans, yeah.
differently.
And
Yeah.
I'm assuming we probably haven't done the analysis yet, but do we have a sense of what any of those other options would be likely to cost in terms of the last slide?
In terms of the last slide,
The mileage program, educational professional stipends, increased tuition reimbursement, retention.
No, I
No.
honestly, I want to get council's feel.
Sure.
Before we dive into this, because there's so much, and like I said, we could build a stipend program that graduates year after year. We can make it a set amount and revisit it 5 years from now. So there's different approaches that we could take, and I'm drawing back on my history. They set amount for bachelor's or associates or masters, and for those professional certifications, and that was good for 5 years. They would revisit it at 5 years. Are those amounts still reasonable? Do we need to bump them up?
That
kind
makes
of
sense,
thing.
so that you have a sunset as well,
Yes.
so that folks can
Yes.
plan out and have
Yeah.
that. I mean, I think from my perspective at least, I'm most interested in what the 2 of you think would be most beneficial for recruitment and retention. I mean, I think you know the officers here and you know the prospective officers much better than I ever could.
Well, I can tell you, I've taken a straw poll on the sabbatical leave program, and I have yet to find one officer that didn't think that was absolutely phenomenal idea. And not because they're getting 30 days off for free. They actually have a chance to get away from here, disconnect, recharge, refocus. I can't tell you, since we started talking about this, how valuable I would have found that as a line officer coming up over the last 30 years, to be able to get that time, because I was one of those officers. I'm not taking off and letting something happen to my shift while I'm gone. I was that guy. When I left Virginia, I had 1,300 hours of sick leave. Yeah. And that was after 4 shoulder surgeries. So, I know how that feels, and I think somebody telling you, you're going to take off, and you're going to do it in this capacity, would make a difference. And I know it would matter to mama and the kids, or husband and the kids.
and then one last thing on the previous slide, the city does offer an anniversary bonus starting at 5 years, and that is for all city employees. And that is paid annually after that.
So the last consideration here is, we've already talked about it a bit, the housing, and Mr. Stevens covered some of this. Again, just reflecting on the 30% of our team that lives outside the city. And I'm guessing, after looking at names on the roster and kicking it around with Commander Bell, probably about half of that percentage would like to live in the city. But we're really facing some struggles in terms of available housing that is affordable to them making $26, $27 an hour. And finding one that is, quite honestly, for what they can afford, livable. So we really challenged there, and Ryan and I have kicked this around, and Ryan has been at the tip of this spear over the last 2 or 3 years, and he probably has far greater perspective on it than me, but any way that we could, city-owned rentals, converting to that ownership, rent assistance stipends, down payment assistance. I think we've pretty much accepted everything's on the table. But it's all, it depended on funding, revenue availability. But again, anything along those lines, I know there are different models. I believe Salida, if I remember correctly, talking with Chief Johnson up there, they have over the last several years acquired homes as they hit the market, city-owned, and then they rent those out to their police department and other teachers and things like that. And I believe Mr. Hartman over at the schools just recently did that.
Yeah, they're doing a project over at the old Harrison School. I think they have 4 or 5 units over there that are being built by Dreamwood Homes here in Fremont County. We've explored, or I've explored, various partnerships with the other governmental entities about doing a larger housing project where, each entity pitches in for a certain number of units to get the project, still looking for some additional funds that could help with a project like that.
Yeah, and it's a real struggle. Just yesterday, was it yesterday, the day before, we hired our latest hire. That's where he had spent his day before he came in to talk to me, was trying to find housing in the city. He wanted to live in the city, and he just was having a heck of a time. He ventured out. I think the closest thing he found was Wetmore. Imagine that in the winter. Yeah, I wouldn't want to driving that to come to work.
Yeah, but, solving the housing issue also kind of solves some of those travel expense issues as well. If you have
Yeah.
somebody that's
Yeah.
living in the community, they're getting a take-home vehicle, and it solves some of that issue.
And I'll close this out real quick. Over the last 5 years, again, we've made many, many, many improvements. I could not be prouder of our accomplishments, our team. The culture and climate, we have restructured and reorganized, amplifying unit cohesion, enhanced accountability, expanded that community connection. The career development plan, digital forensics, used to have to, send that off to the state, 6-9 months, wait for your evidence to come back. And we have somebody in-house that can manage all of that now. The SWAT team, boasting our critical response posture, being ready for those emergencies. Again, the better training and equipment. Our reputation is professional and attractive and competitive with our benefits. So I want to close in this capacity just to remind you all that we see you, and we appreciate all that you've done for us over the last 5 years. I struggled coming in here to ask for anything additional, because I know how hard you've worked to provide what you have provided us. But again, the proverbial dog, if I don't come to you and we continue down this road, and I'm not doing you any favors, I'm certainly not doing my job, so. And I think that's all I got.
Just a thought that has occurred to me as we're going through this, Chief, so on taking a vehicle home,
Yes.
it doesn't have to be a squad car.
No, but the beauty in the squad car
I
is
understand, but
Okay.
there's quite a bit of price differential.
Oh, yes, yes.
So that may be, I understand
No,
that utility.
I'm
but
tracking what you're saying. Yeah, I'm tracking what you're saying.
Any other comments from
I
council?
just had excuse me, you've had a lot of questions.
No, it isn't a question. It was just a follow-up to what John said.
And I know the hierarchy, all we go through, and then us represent a huge bunch of people, the residents, and they're proud of you, and they're proud, and they feel well taken care of, and they should. But one of the questions I had is, has childcare ever come up as
Yes, sir.
something that ought to be
Yes, sir.
considered?
And I struggled with whether or not to put it on this list. But yes, sir, it has. But you know, and when I say I struggle with whether or not to put it on a list, and I don't know that that's a fair assessment. Maybe I just was gun shy, but you know, my initial thought was that impacts a very small percentage of our organization overall. But so does the field stipend. So I would say nothing's off the table. But, you know, we have talked about that, yes.
Another thing is that years ago, Jaffa had a special interest rate for police officers. And it was quite a good one. I don't know if they would still have that or if they had that capability, because interest rates right now can kill you from getting it. And they can also move you up into a different price range house. We do have inventory. Unfortunately, they're beyond the average home is beyond that reach of a person that's making $30,000 to $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
But if you had the ability to do that to where the interest rate could be reduced, a buy down, that would be it. It could be. It helped in years past.
Well, there's a level of expertise in that arena on that diocese that far exceeds my bandwidth. So honestly, I mean, that's why we brought it to you all. Want your feedback, want your suggestions, want your questions. There's a lot of different ways we could work to change this trajectory.
Just a quick question that maybe doesn't even fit in very well, but I think about one of my professions in the past as a caseworker in human services, that they used to say, at least years ago, and they probably still do, that there's a certain percentage of caseworkers that just wash out in the first year because it's a bad fit. And I mean, that's almost like a separate group from what we're talking about here, but I don't know, do you see that much with law, or do they wash out before they get through all of this?
That's a great question, and that's a mixed bag answer, because oftentimes the sooner they come to us is typically about money. Mm-hmm. They see their paycheck and they go, I can't do that on this. And then others, it might take a little time, but you know, sometimes it takes a little while to realize this is not for me. So it's a mixed bag. We have a very small percentage that say that, because most people have given it serious consideration before they raise their right hand. The bulk of them come to us and go, I can't do this on this.
Right.
They go through a
Yeah,
pretty rigorous
Tim, that's-
hiring process as well. that,
Yes.
you know, evaluates a lot of those types of questions.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I can kind of speak to that. So our current hiring process for police officers does help us mitigate a lot of the problems surrounding people who get into the career field and don't know what they're getting into. So for police officers, for them to come in and after a while and say, this isn't for me, that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
However, we do see it on the professional side, our non-sworn staff, specifically in our CSO units, where they come in, they get a different sort of hiring process,
Right.
and they come in and they don't really understand the nuances that they're faced with. More specifically, how often they deal with people that are in high-stress situations and how they deal with conflict.
Right.
So to what Chief Schick was saying, we don't necessarily see the police officers leaving for those reasons. but for the professional
That
staff.
makes sense, because they're
Yeah.
getting a lot more exposure ahead of time with the training and all of that, so.
And back to what Mr. Stevens said, it's quite extensive, the backgrounds and
Yeah,
the interviews and the polygraphs and, yeah.
right, which is not a typical job process. Right.
And despite the vacancy issues that we've had in the police department, especially on sworn staff, Chief Schick and I are we don't embrace the warm body syndrome. We want to make sure that we are finding the right person with the right
Yes.
fit that's going to serve
It's
our
very
community.
important.
Right.
Because not being cognizant of that changes your culture and climate. You start bringing the wrong people in for the wrong reasons. So we'd rather work short than experience that.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, you had mentioned a regional group in case you have questions. Is that
The peer support team, the
peer
regional peer
support team.
support team.
Is that
We
region-
started that 21, yeah, 21.
and that is
It
not
is
just
Canyon City Police Department, Canyon City Fire, CCRA, the Regional Communication Authority,
Okay.
Dispatch, and Buena Vista, and I think Westcliff? Custer, I'm sorry, Custer County, yeah.
who are the people on that? Are those people within those departments?
They're
that
all
are
peers
con-
within the
they're peers,
department.
okay.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Well, I've been quiet this whole time. I already decided coming in here that whatever the chief was going to ask for, we're going to give him. So, but I know that's not
Well, thank you,
reasonable.
Mr. Maloney.
My opinion, the two things is the mental health aspect that we talked about. The sabbatical is great. I think when I campaigned for this position, I said we need to be in line with every other law enforcement organization in the state that we paid, so we don't leave people because they can get paid more somewhere else. So that needs to be considered in a budget this year, please. I think we should need to get to a higher level. That's huge for retention. That's the nuts and bolts.
Yes.
And the other thing I wanted to say, between Preston and I, we're both licensed realtors. I'm a licensed loan officer. There's a good neighbor program for HUD-owned properties that we can monitor. They come up randomly, not very often, but it has to be in a revitalization area. 50% of the cost of the house is forgiven over a period of time for
Oh,
law
wow.
enforcement. And
Okay.
you're familiar, you know this program, yeah. And I haven't looked at it in a long time, but I'll just,
Would it help if we surveyed our folks and got contact information, if you come across that, or do you
Yeah.
just want to call us, or?
for now, starting tomorrow, I'll start monitoring the website and to see
Well,
what
thank you.
properties do come up. And then I can just send those listings to
Thank you. That
You
could be
can share that
incredibly
with
helpful.
your people. I mean, it's a little thing and it might not be a big deal, but it's something we can try to do.
Well, I can assure you, if somebody gets a house off of it for
Yeah,
what
50%
the
off.
savings you're talking about, it'll be a
Yeah.
big deal.
And they have to stay there for a period of time, then that second,
That's a
silent
good
second's
problem to
forgiven.
have.
Right, yeah. So, I will start working on that and I'll
Thank you very
I'll work
much.
with Preston on that.
Thank
so
you.
As well.
Way to go, Jerry.
Nice.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Anybody? Chief?
I can't thank you all enough. I greatly appreciate your time, your consideration, your offers. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think with that, we're adjourned.